Welcome back to Mythic Codex Legends Unveiled, the place where mythology, folklore, and legends come alive. I'm your host Eliza, and tonight we'll uncover the stories that have captivated humanity for thousands of years. Turn the page, our journey begins now. There are monsters that come from forests. There are creatures said to rise from the water. And then there are legends that are much more frightening because the monster is supposed to be a human. Tonight we're traveling to Malaysia and Indonesia, where one of the Southeast Asia's most disturbing legends has haunted stories for generations. A figure known as the Orang Minyak. The name literally means oily man or oil man. And according to the legend, he isn't simply a creature hiding in the shadows. He's a man covered from head to toe in black oil, using the darkness as to become almost impossible to see. But what makes this legend so disturbing isn't the oil. It's what the Orang Minyak is said to do with it. So tonight, we're going into the darkness, and I want you to ask yourself one question before we begin. If you saw a completely black figure standing outside your home at night, would you assume it was a person or something else? The Orang Minyak is primarily associated with Malaysia's folklore, although variations of the story have appeared throughout the region. The legend became especially well known during the 20th century, when stories began circulating about a mysterious man who would coat his body in oil and move throughout communities at night. The oil served as a purpose. It was said to make him difficult to grab, difficult to see, and nearly impossible to catch. Image trying to hold onto someone whose entire body is covered in slippery oil. Your hands would slip, your grip would disappear, and by the time you realized what was happening, he could already be gone. But there are different explanations for why the Orang Minyak did this. And that's where the legend becomes even darker. Some stories describe him as a criminal using the oil as a disguise. Others claim he was involved in black magic. And some versions say he was attempting to fulfill a supernatural bargain. According to the particularly disturbing version, a man could become an Orang Minyak after making a pact with supernatural forces in exchange for wealth, power, or another desire. But the price, he would have to commit horrific acts, and once the bargain was made, there was no easy way out. Why oil? This is one of the strangest parts of the legend. Why oil? Why not a mask? Why not clothing? Why cover yourself in something that would make you look even more unnatural? Because in folklore, oil has often been connected with riddles, magics, transformations, and the supernatural. And in the Orang Minyak stories, it became almost like a second skin. The figure isn't described as simply wearing black clothes. He's covered in something dark, shiny, and slippery. Something that would make him look almost human, but not quite. Picture this. You're awake late at night. The house is quiet. You hear something outside. You look through the window, and standing beneath the faint light is a figure. No shirt, no recognizable clothing. His entire body is glistening, his skin appearing almost completely black, and then he turns toward the house. That's the moment the legend becomes terrifying, because now you know something saw you. So let me ask you something. If you saw the Orang Minyak standing outside your house tonight, would you investigate, or would you lock every door, turn off lights, and pretend you never saw him? Because honestly, I'm not opening the door. I'm turning off all the lights. I'm making sure every door is locked. I don't care if that is a supernatural being or a person. It's strange and creepy, regardless. The Man in the Darkness. Descriptions of the Orang Minyak vary depending on the story, but the image is usually similar. A man, usually naked or nearly naked, his body covered in oil, his skin appearing black beneath the darkness, and moving silently through the night. Some stories say he climbs walls, others describe him slipping through windows, and some versions claim he can move incredibly quickly. That creates another terrifying image. Image hearing footsteps outside your bedroom. You get up. You look into the hallway, nothing. You check the front door, locked. You return to your room, and then you hear something against the window. Scratch. You freeze. Another scratch. You slowly turn toward the glass, and there is a hand pressing against it, covered in oil. The Orang Minyak isn't usually portrayed as a harmless supernatural being. He's considered dangerous, and many versions of the legend connect him with attacks against women. That part of the folklore has made the Orang Minyak especially frightening, because the story isn't about encountering some distant monster in the wilderness. The danger is supposed to enter your home, your neighborhood, your bedroom, your safe place. Some stories claim women were warned to wear certain clothing or mark themselves with specific substance to make themselves less attractive to the Orang Minyak. Other versions describe communities organizing watches at night to protect residents. And this is where folklore begins to blur with real fear. Because even if someone didn't believe in the supernatural, there could still be a very real person hiding in the darkness, someone using the legend as a disguise. And that possibility may be even more frightening than the monster itself. So here's another question for you. Do you think the Orang Minyak was originally meant to be a supernatural creature, or could the legend have grown from real crimes committed by people using disguises? Because sometimes the scariest legends aren't completely factual. Sometimes there's a real event bruised underneath them. See, I think that it could possibly be a real human covered in black oil. It could be. And honestly could be. But the other frightening thing is that It also could be a supernatural being. I don't know which is scarier, but I feel like they're both equally scary. It's both equally scary. I don't think any of us would want anything trying to get into our house at night while we're trying to sleep and then attack us. No way. That's scary. The image of the Orang Minyak is disturbing for another reason. Oil changes the appearance of the human body. It catches light, it reflects movement, and when you're standing in the darkness, you might not see a person's actual figure. You might only see a silhouette, a black shape, a glimmer, a movement, and then nothing. That's perfect for a ghost story because the less you can see, the more your imagination fills in. The Orang Minyak doesn't need horns. He doesn't need glowing eyes. He doesn't need claws. He's terrifying because he looks almost human. And almost human can be far scarier than something that's obviously isn't. One of the most supernatural versions of the story says that the Orang Minyak is connected to a dark riddle. A man supposedly seeks supernatural power. He wants something badly enough that he's willing to make a bargain. Perhaps wealth, perhaps power, perhaps revenge. But supernatural bargains in folklore almost always come with a price. The man is transformed. His body becomes coated in oil. And he is given a task, a terrible task. Only by completing it can he receive what he was promised. But there's a catch. The more horrible the act becomes, the further the man moves away from being human. And eventually, the question becomes, is he controlling the curse, or is the curse controlling him? So here's another question. If someone offered you everything you've ever wanted, but told you that you'd have to become the Orang Minyak to get it, how much would you be willing to sacrifice? Would there be a price that was simply too high? I think that's one of the most interesting things about this legend, because underneath the monster is a very human question. What would you do for the thing you want most? Would you take their offer? I know my answer. But do you know yours? Think about it. And I would really like to know what you guys think in the comments. Now, the Orang Minyak's stories aren't famous because he's some blood-soaked creature tearing people apart. The horror is different. It's intimate. It's the fear of being watched, being followed, being vulnerable in your own home. And that's why some versions of the legend can feel more disturbing than traditional monster stories. There's no giant beast hiding in the forest. There's a person, someone who can walk, someone who can climb, someone who can open a door, someone who might be standing just outside the window. And if the stories are true, the oil makes him difficult to stop. That creates a particularly gruesome image in folklore. Image trying to grab the intruder. Your hands close around his arm and immediately slip. You try again, nothing. The figure pulls away. The room is dark. Your heart is pounding. Boom, 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 boom. and before you can react, he disappears into the night. When legends meet a reality, this is where I think the Orang Minyak becomes especially frightening. Because unlike some mythical creatures, this legend has been connected to an actual criminal behavior. People have reportedly used the appearance of the Orang Minyak as a disguise. And when something frightening already exists in the public imagination, a criminal can take advantage of that fear. If someone sees a strange black figure running through the neighborhood, they might immediately think the Orang Minyak, and that can make it easier for a real person to hide behind a supernatural story. That's one of the darkest possibilities surrounding this legend. Maybe the monster wasn't always the thing people needed to fear. Maybe sometimes the monster was simply a man. So here's my final question for you. Do you think legends like the Orang Minyak protect communities by warning people about danger, or do they sometimes make real danger harder to recognize? Because when everyone is looking for a supernatural monster, they might forget to look for an ordinary human being, and sometimes ordinary humans can be far more dangerous. See, I think that's really scary because it could actually be a supernatural creature, but at the same time, it could simply just be an actual person using this legend to harm people so that they can get away with it. That is horrifying. Not only horrifying, that's like very psychotic behavior. Why would anybody want to do that? I guess nobody really knows why somebody would want to hurt a lot of people. The only people that would actually know would be the people that are doing it. And sometimes the people that are doing it think that it's okay, think that it's normal. They think that their reaction is perfectly normal. That is also a crazy feeling. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The legend that refuses to disappear, the Orang Minyak, has changed over time. The stories have changed, the explanations have changed, and the details aren't always the same. But the image remains. A dark figure covered in oil, moving through the night, watching from somewhere you can't quite see. And maybe that's why the legend has survived, because darkness has always frightened people. Not because we know what's hiding inside it, but because we don't. The Orang Minyak gives that darkness a shape, a human shape, a black silhouette standing beneath a streetlight, a hand against a window, a footprint disappearing into the night. And maybe the most frightening part isn't asking whether the Orang Minyak ever existed. Maybe the frightening question is this: if you saw him tonight, would you recognize him before he recognizes you? That's a good question. I don't think I would recognize him because you don't know what's underneath that. It could be a even scarier supernatural creature, or it could be some psychopathic person just covered in black oil watching you. Either way, it's disturbing and creepy. This is Mythic Codex Legends Unveiled, and remember, sometimes the oldest legends aren't meant to tell us what to believe. They're meant to remind us what to fear. Until next time, keep the lights on and watch the shadows, because you never know what's standing just beyond them.